Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the oddly charming, occasionally uncomfortable, and always fascinating world of how people used to sleep in the Middle Ages. Imagine this, a flickering rushlight casting long shadows on a rough-hewn wall, the heavy scent of wood smoke and sweat in the air, and the scratch of straw underneath you, or, if you're lucky, a sagging feather mattress. Outside, wolves howl. Inside, someone next to you is already snoring like a dragon. What you might not know is that back then, your night didn't happen in one neat 8-hour chunk. Nope. People in the medieval world often split their sleep into two distinct parts, with a wide-eyed, fully conscious break in the middle. You probably won't survive this without itching, sneezing, or bumping into someone else's elbow. But hey, it's bedtime history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sleep once. They slept twice. That's the first jarring thing you notice in medieval life, the split sleep cycle. Known as first sleep and second sleep, this wasn't just some fringe habit, it was common across medieval Europe. People would tuck in just after nightfall and snooze for about 4 hours. Then they'd wake, fully, and stay awake for a solid hour or two, before drifting off again until dawn. During that waking interval, called the watch, people prayed, talked, had sex, even visited neighbors or got a bit of extra farm work done. You can imagine someone squinting through the dark, darning socks or whispering secrets while the hearth embers glowed. Think of it as a bonus round of midnight productivity, minus your phone's blue light. Historians still argue whether this sleep pattern was purely biological, linked to melatonin cycles, or if it emerged because of limited daylight and early bedtimes. Whatever the reason, most agree it was normal. In fact, first sleep and second sleep pop up in literature, medical texts, and personal letters well into the 17th century. The weirdest part? People didn't just tolerate it, they seemed to enjoy it. The in-between time was considered quiet and serene, a space for reflection or romance. You might sit by the fire with your spouse or say a midnight prayer hoping to avoid demonic dreams. We'll get to those creepy dream omens. Of course, this all depended on your station in life. A peasant's watch might involve tending to a sick animal or mending a broken tool. A monk's might be silent prayer. A nobleman's might be a chance to write in his journal, drink warm ale, or debate theology while in bed. So yes, bed-based philosophy was a thing. Modern sleep scientists think our bodies might naturally want this split sleep when left without artificial light. In fact, experiments with no light exposure often lead to people naturally slipping into this two-part rhythm. So maybe the medieval folks were accidentally hacking their circadian rhythms long before anyone put biohacking in their Twitter bio. One particularly quirky tidbit: some people used the first wake-up as the perfect moment to check for thieves. Since most towns didn't have locks or had doors you could push open with a sneeze, it wasn't uncommon for someone to quietly step outside to make sure no one was walking off with their goat. But what if you didn't have two sleeps? Say you were a baker or blacksmith's apprentice pulling late hours, or a tavern maid serving ale till midnight. Then your sleep might look more like a nap-sprint combo, catching an hour here, 2 hours there. For them, broken sleep wasn't some gentle midnight ritual. It was just exhaustion and necessity. And don't forget, sunrise was your alarm clock, whether you liked it or not. If you lived in a city, that midnight wake-up came with added sounds: the creak of wagons unloading goods, roosters confused about what hour it was, and maybe even church bells marking the night hours. Cities like Paris and London kept time with public bell towers, so you'd literally be jolted awake at regular intervals. And if you were lucky enough to dream, well, that was considered spiritual territory. People believed the time between the two sleeps was when you were closest to God, or, depending on your dream content, to something much darker. We'll dig into those creepy dream-omings in a bit. So here you are, halfway through the night. You've had 4 hours of rest, stirred awake by habit, silence, or your seatmate's unfortunate snoring. Maybe you reach for your devotional beads. Maybe you reach for your partner. Maybe you just sit, thinking. In a world without streetlights or smartphones, the space between first and second sleep was a gentle pocket of solitude. And in that silence, you understand something odd. Sleep back then wasn't just rest. It was a ritual, a rhythm, almost a way of life.
You stretch, yawn, and try not to elbow the person next to you, but it's a lost cause. You're not sleeping alone. In medieval times, sharing your bed wasn't just normal, it was expected. Welcome to the era of communal sleeping, where privacy is a luxury and bedfellows are part of the package whether you like it or not. Let's say you're a traveling merchant arriving at an inn. You pay a few coins for a spot to sleep, but surprise, you're plopping down on a lumpy straw mattress beside 1 or 2 total strangers. No, not another bed, the same bed. Don't worry, they'll politely turn their backs. Or maybe not. Either way, best keep your belongings close and your expectations low. This wasn't just about space, it was about warmth. Beds were expensive, and fires didn't burn all night, unless you were rich. Sleeping next to someone, even a stranger, was practical. Shared body heat meant you might not freeze. In peasant cottages, the whole family, and sometimes the animals, huddled together on pallets or piles of hay. If you had siblings, congratulations, you were a lifelong bed partner. And beds weren't just any old furniture. If you owned a feather bed with a wooden frame, that was a major status symbol. In fact, beds were sometimes passed down in wills, like prized heirlooms. You didn't say, "I love you." You said, "You can have my feather mattress when I die." But more common was the bed as a concept, not a piece of furniture. It might be a sack of straw, a pile of leaves, or a wooden platform covered with rushes. These straw-stuffed ticks were itchy, often flea-infested, and needed to be regularly beaten and fluffed to stay halfway decent. If you didn't, your dreams might include a surprise encounter with a curious beetle or worse. Oh, and speaking of uninvited guests, lice, bedbugs, and fleas were practically roommates. Personal hygiene wasn't exactly top tier in most circles, and your sleep might be interrupted by a serious scratching session. There's even a medieval saying, 3 things drive away sleep: bedbugs, fleas, and a guilty conscience. One of those is easier to fix than the others. The wealthy had it better, of course. Their beds had curtains, more for warmth and privacy than style, and thick mattresses stuffed with wool, feathers, or down. If you were rich, you might have your own room, even your own bed, but you still often shared it with your spouse, your children, or your servants. The concept of personal space didn't exist. Your chamber was a hive of life and noise, whispering attendants, flickering candles, barking dogs, and maybe someone creeping in to steal your shoes. For lower-class folk, sharing space meant sharing everything. Cottages often had one room. You slept, cooked, ate, and stored tools all in the same place. The bed might be near the hearth, both for warmth and convenience. And when the animals were brought in for the night, yes, really, the line between barn and bedroom got blurry fast. You'd drift off to the soothing sound of a goat chewing cud and the less soothing sound of your brother snoring into your ear. One quirky habit: when traveling, people brought their own straw. Inns didn't always supply bedding, and you'd often spread your own tick on a hard bench or floor. Wealthier travelers even packed a servant whose job was to prepare your bedding. That's right, your travel buddy was also your mobile mattress fluffer. Historians still debate whether communal sleeping led to deeper social bonds or if it was simply tolerated out of necessity. Was the lack of privacy a bonding force, or just one more thing people learned to endure? Some believe the closeness reinforced family unity and trust. Others argue that resentment and rivalry probably festered when you were shoulder to shoulder every single night. And you weren't just sharing physical space, you were sharing sounds, smells, and habits. If your uncle liked to mutter prayers in his sleep, you were going to hear them. If your sister kicked like a mule, you were the one getting bruised. If your cousin had beans for dinner, well, you get the idea. Still, some people got creative. Wealthier households used truckle beds, small wheeled beds that rolled under the main bed. A servant or child might sleep there, close enough to be helpful, but out of immediate elbow range. In larger castles or manors, pages and attendants might sleep in the same room, but not the same bed, offering at least a whisper of privacy. Now picture yourself, lying on your side, someone breathing into your neck, someone else scratching beside you, the fire down to its final ember. Maybe a dog curls at your feet. Maybe your sister mumbles in her sleep. You pull the rough wool blanket tighter, hoping it doesn't already have fleas. Outside, the wind groans against the wooden shutters. Inside, there's the smell of smoke, sweat, straw, and stew. It's not glamorous, but it's strangely homey. In this world, sleep is rarely solitary. It's communal, noisy, and tactile. And in the morning, you're all waking up with straw in your hair and dreams you may or may not admit to. You rise together, grumble together, scratch together. Because in the Middle Ages, you didn't just sleep with company, you lived in it.
You tiptoe across cold stone floors, past snoring retainers and the occasional scurrying rat, until you reach the nobleman's bedchamber. Ah, yes, you've been promoted for the night. No more shared straw pallets or goats breathing in your ear. Tonight, you sleep like a lord, or at least you try. First things first, you wait for the bed to be warmed. That's right. If you were rich in the Middle Ages, someone else handled the frigid horrors of crawling between icy sheets. A servant would heat a metal pan filled with glowing embers and gently slide it beneath the covers to take the edge off. Just hope they didn't scorch the mattress or your future bedmate's feet. The nobleman's bed is a beast of a thing, huge, carved, and standing high above the cold floor. You practically need a step stool to climb into it. It's draped in heavy, luxurious curtains that help trap warmth and block out nosy servants or drafty gusts. The mattress is thick, stuffed with feathers or wool, and the pillows are so soft you almost forget they're probably crawling with microscopic medieval roommates. But even with all this luxury, sleep is still a production. Before bed, nobles followed a strict evening routine. You'd wash up, but not with a shower or even a bath, just a quick splash from a basin, if that. Soap? Maybe. Scented oils or herbs? More likely. And if you were really high up the food chain, you had someone do the washing for you. Hygiene, medieval style. Then come the prayers. A nobleman would kneel beside the bed, muttering lengthy devotions to ward off demons, bad dreams, or sudden death in the night. Death while sleeping was genuinely feared. It was seen as unprepared, even shameful, especially if you hadn't confessed your sins. So those prayers weren't just ritual, they were spiritual armor. Historians still argue whether the elite slept better than the peasants or just differently. Sure, they had feather mattresses and fireplaces, but they also had political enemies, ulcers from bad wine, and the constant paranoia that someone might stab them in their sleep. Trade-offs, right? Once your soul is safely guarded and your chamber pot has been strategically placed near the bed, because of course no one's trudging through a dark manor at 2 a.m., you slip beneath the covers. Except you're not necessarily alone. If you're married, your spouse joins. If you're hosting a guest, they might too. And sometimes, just for added weirdness, your body servant curls up nearby, ready to leap into action should you desire an extra pillow or a midnight snack. In one well-documented case, a nobleman shared his bed not just with his wife, but with his valet and his hunting dog. Talk about a crowded sleep. The dog probably got the best spot. One fringe detail: some noblewomen, especially during menstruation or pregnancy, slept on chaff beds made from dried plants like lavender or reeds, which they believed had health benefits. It's like aromatherapy, but more pokey. You might think this grand room would be silent, but not so. A castle is a living, breathing creature. The timbers creak, wind whistles through the stonework, and outside the window you might hear the clank of guards patrolling or the scream of a barn owl. Inside, servants murmur in hallways, a mouse scampers under the door, and someone somewhere is coughing, because someone is always coughing. Some nobles even had musical sleep rituals. Lullabies weren't just for babies. Minstrels might play gentle tunes as the household wound down. That said, if your lord liked poetry, brace yourself for a dramatic sonnet or two before bed. Romance was alive and awkward. One quirky bedtime superstition involved iron. Many nobles kept iron implements near the bed to ward off evil spirits. A dagger under the pillow, an iron horseshoe nailed to the bedpost. Charming decor, really. Some believed witches or demons might try to suffocate them during the night, so protective charms, religious relics, or saintly tokens were common sleeping companions. And let's talk lighting. There's no electric lamp to click off. Candles, often made from tallow, aka rendered animal fat, burn low and stink faintly. If you're rich enough, you have beeswax candles instead, which smell sweeter and don't smoke as much. But either way, you go to sleep bathed in a flickering amber glow. Kind of cozy. Kind of ominous. Finally, wrapped in linen sheets and thick wool blankets, surrounded by carvings of lions and saints, and the subtle scent of rosemary bundles tucked beneath the mattress, you drift off. Or try to, because being a nobleman doesn't save you from insomnia, heartburn from the roast board dinner, or the haunting knowledge that peasants with less are somehow sleeping deeper than you. The noble bedchamber, for all its grandeur, is still a place of vulnerability. You remove your sword, your shoes, your social mask, and just for a few hours, you become something all medieval people were at night: unguarded, dreaming, human.
The floor is hard. Your back aches. And is that a chicken? Yes. Yes, it is. Welcome to Peasant Sleep, where luxury is relative and bedtime might involve the occasional rogue goose waddling over your legs. Forget feather beds or private chambers. If you're a medieval peasant, your bedroom is also your kitchen, dining room, storage space, and barn. Most peasants lived in single-room homes with packed dirt floors and thatched roofs. If you were lucky, the roof didn't leak. If you weren't, your dreams came with a free drizzle. You bed down on a pile of straw or rushes, maybe a straw-stuffed tick if you're doing well that year. The family all sleeps in a single area near the hearth, which stays warm long after the fire burns down to glowing coals. Sometimes there's a low wooden platform to elevate you slightly, just enough to pretend you're not sleeping on the actual earth. And you're not alone. Your spouse, your kids, your grandmother, and sometimes your cow or goat all share this little world with you. Livestock were often brought inside during colder months for warmth and protection. So, yes, your bedtime lullaby might include the rhythmic chewing of cud or the gentle flop of a pig's ear. Sensory overload? Definitely. The smell is layered. Smoke from the hearth, manure clinging to boots, onions drying on the rafters, and someone's sweaty tunic from a long day of threshing. There's a warm, earthy tang to the air. One part hominess, one part barnyard. The fire's glow is the closest thing you have to a nightlight. It flickers low, casting shadows on the timber walls and highlighting the straw bundles stuffed between the beams for insulation. You can see your breath in the colder months, even under woolen blankets, but everyone cuddling together like medieval sardines makes the chill bearable. Sort of. Historians still argue whether this closeness brought comfort or conflict. Did shared sleep create stronger family bonds, or did it just force people to tolerate each other at every possible hour? Most likely it was both. Imagine trying to sleep while your father snores like a war drum and your little brother kicks like a donkey. You're basically trapped in a sensory family reunion that never ends. But bedtime was also a social checkpoint. It was when stories were shared, gossip was whispered, and prayers were muttered into the darkness. Folk tales passed down for generations often began here, by the firelight, while someone picked straw from their hair and listened with one ear open for wolves. Quirky habits? Absolutely. Some peasants tied up their feet with rags to keep them warm. Others placed heated stones under their bedding. A few stuffed dried herbs like lavender or rosemary into the straw to ward off fleas, and possibly evil spirits. Multifunctional living at its finest. Clothing-wise, you often slept in your day clothes, or at least your undertunic. Changing was a luxury, and doing laundry was a painful, cold, arm-breaking ordeal. So you got cozy in what you wore to milk the cow. Nightshirts were a rare luxury, more common among the slightly wealthier folk. Oh, and remember the chamber pot in the nobleman's room? You don't have that. If nature calls at midnight, you stumble out into the yard with a torch, hoping not to trip over a chicken or get bitten by something mysterious in the grass. Or, if you're smart and very rural, you just dig a little trench behind the house and pray no one's looking. And don't forget the bugs. Straw mattresses are basically tiny amusement parks for lice, fleas, and all their extended families. You might find yourself waking up scratching furiously, or slapping a rat if you're really having a rough night. Still, for all its discomforts, peasant sleep had a rhythm to it. After a day of grueling labor, your body wants to sleep. You've been up since dawn, planting, harvesting, or hauling water. Your muscles ache, your hands are blistered, and your eyes are heavy. That moment when you finally collapse onto the straw? Bliss. Scratchy, smelly bliss. But it doesn't last.
You wake halfway through the night. Remember that first and second sleep pattern? You might stoke the fire, check on the baby, or whisper a quiet prayer. Maybe you and your partner share a rare moment of intimacy, where you stare at the rafters, thinking about tomorrow's chores. One oddity: some peasants hung charms or little carvings above the hearth or bed area to protect their dreams. A carved cross, a braided straw doll, or even a dried bird's foot, creepy, yes, might dangle from the ceiling to keep bad spirits or bad luck at bay. Multifunctional living at its finest. Children slept wherever there was room, tucked between parents, curled near the hearth, or even piled together like puppies. No one had a bedroom, you had a space. If your feet fit, it was yours. Co-sleeping wasn't a trend, it was survival. And yet, in spite of everything, the noise, the fleas, the occasional goat to the ribs, there's something kind of sweet about it all. Life is hard, but you sleep side by side with the people you love, warmed by shared breath and shared burdens. Tomorrow, the rooster will scream at sunrise, and you'll do it all again. But for now, in this close, smoky cottage, surrounded by scratchy straw and familiar snores, you drift off into that deep, exhausted sleep only hard labor can earn. You jolt awake to the low toll of a bell. Not your average snooze alarm. This one's calling you to pray. Welcome to monastic life, where sleep isn't about comfort, it's a spiritual trial. And trust me, if you think sharing your bed with a cow is tough, try sleeping in a stone cell knowing you'll be yanked out of it 6 times a night to chant Latin in the dark. Monks in the Middle Ages had some of the most intense sleep routines known to history. Whether you lived in a Benedictine abbey in France or a remote Scottish monastery with wind howling through the cracks, your nights weren't about dreams. They were about discipline. You begin in silence, always silence. After evening prayers, called Compline, you retreat to the dormitory. Think big, cold hall lined with wooden cots or pallets, sometimes shared, sometimes solitary. Either way, your bed is a plain wooden frame, or maybe just a straw mat. Your pillow? Possibly a folded robe. No luxury here. You're not trying to get comfortable. You're trying to stay humble. Monks wore rough woolen robes, even to bed. Removing them was rare, partially out of modesty, partially because, well, laundry wasn't exactly a daily affair. You might loosen your belt, but you definitely weren't crawling into silk pajamas. You're wrapped in itchy virtue, not Egyptian cotton. And you don't sleep long. A few hours after lying down, just enough to start drooling into your robe, you hear the bell again. It's time for matins, the first major night office. You rise in the dark, still half asleep, and shuffle toward the chapel. The floors are freezing. Your breath mists in the air. You try not to trip over your neighbor's sandals. It's not a vibe, it's a vow. There, in the flicker of a single candle, you chant psalms and scripture with the rest of the brethren. The rhythm of the prayers is slow, measured, hypnotic. You're not supposed to fall asleep, but some monks do. One account describes a brother who repeatedly nodded off and had to be gently elbowed awake mid-hymn. You can blame him. After matins, you return to your cell or cot for a few more hours. This is your first sleep, but unlike the peasants or nobles, you're not easing into dreams. Your sleep is deliberately fragmented. Broken sleep is part of the discipline, meant to weaken the flesh and humble the spirit. You sleep lightly, dream little, and wake easily. Historians still argue how strictly these schedules were followed across different orders. Some monks probably took liberties, others were devout to a punishing degree, waking even more often for private devotions or flagellation sessions, because nothing says good night like hitting yourself with a whip in the name of holiness. And it wasn't just monks. Nuns followed similar patterns, though their dorms were often better maintained and sometimes even a little warmer. Still, they too rose in the night, prayed by candlelight, and tried not to trip over the hem of their habits. One fringe tidbit: some particularly zealous monks refused to lie down at all. They slept sitting up or even standing, using special prayer stools or leaning boards to avoid sinful indulgence. One famously intense hermit reportedly tied himself upright with ropes so he wouldn't accidentally recline. That's next-level sleep denial.
The presence of these night demons wasn't just a belief, it was a certainty to the medieval mind. You wouldn't just brush off a nightmare as a bad dream. No, you'd wake up gasping for air, drenched in sweat, convinced something truly evil had been in your room. And since few understood sleep paralysis or REM cycles, these episodes were interpreted through the only lens they had: spiritual warfare. You'd be advised to pray, of course. Maybe to Saint Benedict, whose metal was thought to protect against evil spirits. Or you'd reach for a devil chaser amulet, maybe a tiny cross carved from rowan wood, tied with red thread and placed under your pillow. If the haunting persisted, you might call a priest to sprinkle holy water around your bed or read passages from the Book of Psalms aloud each night. The atmosphere would be intense, anxious, and dimly lit by candlelight. Exactly the kind of setup that makes any creak in the floorboards feel like an omen. If you lived in a more rural area, your neighbors might recommend folk solutions, like sleeping with a knife under your pillow, blade facing outward, of course, or placing a bowl of salt by your door. Both thought to confuse or trap spirits. Garlic tied to your bedposts was another go-to charm. Not because vampires were a concern, but because garlic was considered a general purifier and demon repellent. More personal explanations existed too. Maybe the dreams were a punishment. Maybe you'd sinned unknowingly. You'd reflect. Did you miss Mass? Lie? Speak ill of someone? A nightmare could feel like divine correction, not just bad digestion. And then there were the mortal explanations. Jealous neighbors, angry ex-lovers, or rival families might be accused of sending demons your way through maleficium, black magic. If a dream came with persistent illness, infertility, or misfortune, it might be considered part of a curse. You might be sent to a cunning woman, a local healer, to identify the culprit and protect yourself with charms, potions, or counterspells. Your dreams became evidence, to be picked apart like clues in a crime. For women especially, nightmares and night visitations carried darker accusations. Women who spoke of strange sleep experiences might be thought possessed, or worse, afflicted with a demonic lover. The line between victim and witch was thin. A woman claiming repeated nightly torment might be believed, pitied, feared, or accused of inviting the spirits herself. A few misinterpreted dreams, and your life could spiral into whispered suspicions and public trials. And so each night, whether you were a laborer in a smoky hut, a nun in a silent dormitory, or a merchant's wife alone during your husband's travels, you'd close your eyes with a small measure of fear, a whispered prayer,
a hand-carved cross, a talisman under your blanket. Every token mattered, because in the dark, your dreams were not just dreams. They were visits from other worlds. And sometimes, not even waking up was enough to be sure you were truly safe.
You lie there in the flickering twilight, barely dozing, tossing and turning in garments that were never meant for sleep. The idea of pajamas, as you know them, doesn't exist. In the medieval world, most people slept in what they wore during the day, or at best, undergarments if they were lucky enough to own multiple layers. And that luxury? It's not for the likes of peasants. Even minor nobles and monks might sleep in woolen tunics, itchy and coarse against bare skin. Linen, if you had it, was the prized exception, a smoother fabric, but still far from silky comfort. Your bedclothes, if the word can be used, are stiff, reused, and never truly clean. Laundry days are rare and exhausting. Sheets, such as they are washed perhaps once a season. Your sleeping garments cling to your body with the accumulated oils of many nights' rest, soaked through with sweat, dirt, and the smell of smoke from daily life. And the itching? You can't escape it. Lice are an accepted part of life. Fleas, too. You'll occasionally spot one crawling near your sleeve, feel the sharp sting of another biting your leg beneath the covers, and you'll slap at your body in the dark, hoping it wasn't something worse, like a rat scurrying under the straw. You might rub garlic or vinegar on your skin to repel the insects, or burn herbs near your bed, but it rarely helps. The bugs always return. Even the feather beds, if you are wealthy or sleeping in a monastery, carry their own kind of discomfort. Feathers poke through poorly sewn ticking, pricking you unexpectedly in the ribs or arms. If you're sleeping on straw, expect it to flatten and rot over time, teeming with pests and stinking with mildew and sweat. Sometimes hay bedding is sprinkled with dried lavender or mint to mask the odor and ward off vermin. It only half works. And let's not forget the drafts. With glass windows being a rare luxury, most homes rely on wooden shutters to block the night. In winter, you'll shiver as freezing air seeps through every gap. Your cloak or extra tunic might double as a blanket, and you'll curl into a ball to conserve warmth, nose tucked into your sleeve. The poor? They sleep beside animals, literally. Dogs, chickens, pigs, your only sources of body heat. But worst of all are the sudden, desperate awakenings in the middle of the night. You need to relieve yourself. There's no bathroom. Just a chamber pot under the bed if you're lucky. If not, you shuffle out barefoot into the freezing dark, finding a corner or a ditch if you're a peasant, or using the shared privy if you're in a castle or monastery. But you're careful. The dark is full of dangers. Snakes, rodents, even spirits if you believe the whispers. And when you return to bed, every sound seems louder. A creak might be a ghost. A rustle in the thatch above might be a rat or a thief. There's no nightlight, no reassurance, only shadows and the crackle of dying embers. If you're in a monastery, the bell rings before sunrise, matins, time for prayers. You've slept barely 3 hours. If you're in a village, the rooster begins to crow. No alarm clock needed. The day begins with cold water, numb fingers, and the taste of yesterday still lingering on your tongue. You scratch at your arms, shift on your uneven bedding, and prepare to do it all again. Sleep in the Middle Ages isn't a luxury. It's an ordeal you survive.
Night after night, you're lying there, huddled beneath your coarse wool blanket, the fire dimming slowly, its embers now casting flickering red shadows across the uneven stone floor. A soft breeze from a drafty wooden shutter brushes against your cheek. It's the dead of night, well past the first sleep, and somewhere in this inky silence, something stirs. A chicken clucks oddly. A dog whines. But these aren't threats, just nocturnal noises in a world where even the walls breathe the life of livestock and timber. Your eyes open. It's the watching hour, as the old women call it. Between midnight and 2 or 3 in the morning, your body does what all medieval bodies do. It wakes. No one's concerned by this interruption. In fact, people expect it. This is when dreams are sharpest, thoughts clearest. Monks rise for matins. Farmers inspect their hearths. Couples talk, reflect, or even slip away for a tryst. In this suspended moment between the first sleep and second sleep, you rise and step outside the cottage. The moon is plump tonight, and the stars shimmer in the cool country air. It's quiet, so quiet you can hear a stream babbling far down in the valley. A few scattered oil lamps flicker in the distance where other souls, too, are wide awake. You sit by a stump, rubbing your hands. This is when the most intimate confessions are whispered. Neighbors might huddle over a cider jug and talk softly about omens and dreams, about God's warnings or signs in the stars. Superstitions rule this hour. It is believed that those born during first sleep are bound for laborious lives, while those born during the watching hour may be touched by visions or madness. A rustle from a nearby shed catches your attention. It's someone letting out the animals to relieve themselves. Yes, even the livestock participate in this curious interruption of the night. The pigs grunt in irritation, eager to return to their hay beds before the cold deepens. When you return inside, a candle has been lit. Your grandmother is up too. She's praying with her rosary by the hearth, eyes closed in a gentle trance. For her, this hour is divine, the time when spirits walk closest to the earth and your prayers have the most weight. You nod respectfully, curling back under your blanket, letting her murmured Latin lull you again. Slowly, second sleep begins, and this stretch of rest feels deeper, more dreamlike. Many folktales say your soul leaves your body during second sleep to wander the world. The dreams during this time are prophetic, or so the village midwife insists. If you dream of fish, prepare for death. If you dream of milk, a child may be born. These beliefs pass down like heirlooms. The morning doesn't come all at once. First, the cock crows. Then, the village bell clangs 1, 2, 3 times. A signal that second sleep is done and the work of the world must begin. You blink groggily, your limbs heavy, but your mind is oddly alert. For in the hours of broken sleep, your consciousness found something the modern world has long forgotten, a rhythm tied not to the clock, but to the cosmos. You stretch. Somewhere, bread is baking. The first blackbird calls. The cycle begins again. But not all in the village follow this peaceful ritual. Some, especially those in cities or wealthier households, have sleep habits far more bizarre. Take, for instance, the noblewoman living just beyond the manor walls. She doesn't sleep in 2 phases. Instead, her physician prescribes her a strict sleeping potion made from poppy seed, lettuce water, and crushed pearls. Yes, pearls. Supposedly calming. She lies awake under a feather-stuffed mattress, fanning herself with a peacock feather fan, dreading the airless night. The windows are shuttered tightly to keep out miasmas, evil air, and the bed hangings are shut like a coffin. She hates the dark. Her servant sleeps sitting up, curled near her door in case she wakes and screams about ghosts again. Sometimes she claims to see her dead brother floating at the foot of her bed. The physician blames bad humors. He recommends bloodletting in the morning. Not far away, a city inn hosts a very different sort of sleeper, the traveling merchant. He's wedged onto a straw mat beside 3 other men he doesn't know, all snoring in varied rhythms. The room smells of sweat, wine, and the faint metallic scent of coin. Sleep here is shallow, threatened by theft or rats. He keeps one hand on his pouch, the other under his tunic where a small dagger lies hidden. The merchant dreams not of fish or milk, but of fire, of his wagon catching flame, or of a bandit ambush. These are not prophetic dreams, they are memories. Across the city, the night watchman dozes lightly in his wooden chair, his pike leaning against the wall. He's not allowed true sleep. Instead, he enters a trance-like state called slumbering, drifting without dreams, ears alert for thieves or cries of fire. Every hour he walks the streets, calling out the time and reporting the weather, as in, 1 o'clock and all's well, cold winds and a clear sky. But not all nights are peaceful. Sometimes someone fails to wake up after their second sleep. In such cases, villagers whisper about death spirits visiting during the watching hour. They say if your fire dies during that time, your soul may follow it into the dark. You, however, wake safely, another night behind you, another full day ahead. But tomorrow, sleep will take a darker turn when you visit the monastery and learn about the monks who barely sleep at all.
You travel eastward, away from the warmth of thatched villages and noisy inns, toward something quieter, stricter. The monastery looms before you like a stone giant, its arched entrance shadowed beneath weathered gargoyles. Inside, the air is cool and dry, steeped in incense and centuries of silence. You've entered the realm where sleep is not a gift, but a temptation, and the body is something to be subdued, not comforted. The Benedictine rule, the strict code of life for these monks, prescribes everything, including sleep, and it allows precious little of it. The monks here rise no later than 2 in the morning for matins, the first of 7 daily prayers. That means their night is often just a few hours of broken rest. They sleep fully clothed, wrapped in simple wool habits, no pillows, no mattresses, just wooden planks or straw sacks in a cold stone dormitory. Blankets are rare and shared. Privacy, unthinkable. One brother snores softly near your side, his breath visible in the chilled air. Another murmurs in Latin as he tosses. This room, though filled with breathing souls, feels more like a crypt. And yet none of them complain. Sleep is viewed as a bodily indulgence, like rich food or idle laughter, something that pulls you away from God. They welcome broken rest. They believe the night's discomfort reminds them of Christ's suffering. Every sharp stone under the spine is a step closer to sainthood. You lie there wide-eyed beneath a high-vaulted ceiling. The flickering flame of a single candle dances across the rafters. You hear nothing but breath and rustle, until suddenly a bell tolls. Clang! Matins! It's time. The monks rise immediately. No grumbling, no yawning. Discipline has shaped them. They shuffle silently into the chapel, where dozens of tiny candles light the vast, cold stone hall. Psalms echo across the cavernous space. Gregorian chants swirl around you like the breeze in a cathedral crypt. The prayers are not short. You kneel, you rise, you kneel again. For 2 hours they sing and speak, and then, perhaps, just perhaps, they return to their dormitory for a little more rest before dawn.
but more often, they proceed straight into chores, baking bread, tending gardens, copying manuscripts by candlelight with bleary eyes and trembling quills. Some monks are proud of how little they sleep. They boast about it not with words, but with devotion. Brother Thomas, old and hunched, has slept no more than 4 hours a night for 50 years. He walks like sleep itself is chasing him, but he says visions come in those hazy, near-waking moments. He once claimed that angels appeared to him during matins. Others aren't so sure. Was it a vision or a dream starved of REM? The monastery physician quietly worries about sleep deprivation madness, though no such term exists yet. He speaks of melancholy and vapors of the brain. He prescribes mint tea or cold foot baths, but rarely sees improvement. The abbey demands too much, and the soul, though willing, drags the flesh behind it like a tired ox. But not every religious community handles sleep the same way. Some mystics embrace it. Deep sleep, long dreams, even trance states they believe are visits from God. In the hills, far from the monastery, a hermit named Sister Alida sleeps nearly 12 hours a day, claiming her dreams are prophecies sent by the Virgin Mary. She eats only herbs and speaks only in riddles. When people visit her with questions, she answers them by quoting her dreams. And the villagers believe her. You begin to wonder, is sleep sacred or sinful? The Church sends conflicting messages. Priests warn that excessive sleep is slothful, one of the 7 deadly sins. Yet dreams are often mentioned in Scripture as divine revelations. Joseph's dreams saved Egypt, after all. Angels whisper at night. And the devil? Well, he creeps in too. To fight temptation, some monks sleep with crucifixes clenched tightly in their hands. Others tie ropes to their wrists that yank them upright if they move too freely in the night. One radical friar you meet even sleeps on a wooden rack covered in nails. Not sharp enough to pierce, but just enough to keep his body rigid and restless. To sleep too soundly, he mutters, is to forget one's purpose. Still, human nature wins in small ways. A young novice sneaks a nap in the apothecary when no one's watching. Another hides a feather under his met to cushion his back. And even the abbot, stern and stoic, once had to be shaken awake during lauds by a particularly loud hymn. As the sun rises over the cloister garden, the monks sing their final chant of the early morning. The light filters through colored glass, scattering reds and blues over the flagstones. Another day of prayer and denial begins. Sleep has been conquered, for now. But as you walk out of the monastery gate, you pass a peasant girl asleep in the hay beside her goats, smiling in a sunbeam. And you wonder, maybe the monks have it all wrong. Next, you're drawn to the curious sleep habits of those who never slept alone, not for comfort, but for survival. In castles, cottages, even brothels, bodies tangled together for warmth, safety, or status. You're about to discover the strange, intimate world of communal sleeping in medieval society.
You're traveling again, this time into the noisy heart of a medieval town, where the concept of a bedroom as we know it is practically non-existent. Privacy, after all, is a luxury. In this crowded, smoky world of shared space and stone walls, sleep isn't just a personal ritual, it's a communal event. And depending on where you lay your head, it can be tender, terrifying, or downright awkward. You're in a small cottage now, wedged between a baker's shop and a carpenter's stall. The air smells of yeast, damp timber, and wet wool. The family who lives here, mother, father, 3 children, and a grandmother, have only one bed. It's a wide wooden frame stuffed with hay and covered in patched linen. When night falls, all of them crowd onto it like sheep into a pen. The children lie crosswise at the foot. The parents sleep side by side at the head. Granny curls near the hearth on a thin mat of reeds, but sometimes, in winter, she joins the pile in bed. It's not for comfort, it's for survival. Heat is precious, and the body is a furnace. To sleep alone is to risk freezing. The snoring, tossing, giggling, and whispering never truly stop. If someone wakes up to use the pot in the corner, everyone stirs. If the baby cries, the whole bed shifts. Sleep is not a solitary escape, it's a group effort, a nightly negotiation of limbs, breaths, and boundaries. And not just in poor homes. You climb the winding staircase of a timber-framed merchant's house. In the grand bedchamber, the lord and lady of the house sleep in a great bed, an enormous oak structure curtained on all sides. But they're not alone. 2 servant girls sleep on pallets nearby, ready to help the lady with her night robe or to fetch water. In winter, even guests are invited to share the bed. To decline would be considered rude, even suspicious. There are even records of complete strangers sharing beds at inns, often lying side by side in silence, sometimes with a wooden board separating them. It's called a bedfellow arrangement. You may arrive in town alone, rent a room, and find yourself nose to nose with a smelly peddler from the next village over. If he snores, you endure. If he steals the covers, too bad. The bed was expensive, and privacy isn't part of the price. In noble courts, bed sharing can become something else entirely, a political tool. You visit a lord's castle. Here, his young male attendants or pages sleep on cushions or thin rugs around his large bed, within arm's reach. But this isn't just about warmth, it's about proximity. Whoever sleeps closest to the Lord might hear his secrets, his dreams, his drunken ramblings. It's a way to gain influence. Some kings go further. Edward II of England famously shared beds with his favorites, not for carnal reasons alone, but as gestures of trust, loyalty, even strategy. In royal courts, sleeping arrangements are scrutinized like military positions. Who lies closest to power? Who is left at the hearth? Not all shared beds are so political. In brothels and bathhouses, sleep and sex intermingle freely. You slip into a dim chamber lit by oil lamps and heavy with lavender and sweat. After a client's pleasures are fulfilled, it's not uncommon for them to fall asleep beside the courtesan, murmuring soft confessions into the night. The bed becomes a confessional, and sleep, unexpectedly, a form of intimacy far beyond the act itself. But not all sleeping arrangements are safe. In some households, especially among the poor, unmarried girls sleep beside older brothers or visiting men. There is no space for modesty. Parents look the other way. And while some follow rules, feet-to-head positions or strict bedtimes, others exploit the opportunity. Whispered complaints rise, but are often drowned out by the creaking of the roof or the hunger of the next day. In some towns, laws are written to restrict bed sharing between sexes. They are rarely enforced. You visit a remote village in the Alps, where a traveler has brought with him tales of the bedbug plague in the city. The villagers laugh nervously. They too have seen strange rashes and sleepless nights, but they have no solution. Mattresses are rarely cleaned. People sleep in shifts, hoping the bugs prefer someone else. Meanwhile, in monasteries and convents, communal sleeping takes on a spiritual tone.
Rows of straw beds line cold stone dormitories, and all must lie in the same position, usually on the right side, facing east. Why east? Because that's the direction of the Holy Land, the direction of resurrection. If you die in your sleep, you'll rise facing Jerusalem. Even peasants adopt this habit. Many insist that sleeping eastward is holy, while sleeping with your head to the west is an invitation to death. They believe the devil approaches from the west, riding on the setting sun. To avoid nightmares, you turn your body toward the dawn. Communal sleep has rules: no loud talking, no farting, no rolling on to others unless it's your child. There are folk customs to protect the sleepers, placing iron nails under the mattress to ward off witches, or hanging garlic above the bed to keep away night spirits. You spend a few nights like this, packed against strangers, overhearing whispered confessions, feeling the heat of other bodies seep into your bones. There's a strange comfort to it, a feeling that you are never truly alone, even in the darkest hours. And yet part of you yearns for space, for a room of your own, a mattress without fleas, sheets that smell of rosemary and not unwashed limbs. But that is a dream for a different age. Soon, you'll arrive in a strange and chilling place, one where nightmares are not just figments of sleep, but real threats. Welcome to the age of sleep paralysis, demons, and the terror of the night hag.
The night is darker now. You feel it in your bones as you cross into a realm the villagers fear to name aloud. The hour when sleep stops being rest and becomes a battlefield. Welcome to the haunted side of slumber, where dreams aren't just strange, they're sinister, and something invisible may be sitting on your chest, stealing your breath. You're in a candlelit cottage, dozing on a hay-stuffed mattress. The fire has gone out. The air feels suddenly colder, though the windows are latched tight. You turn in your sleep, murmuring, half dreaming of running feet, until your eyes snap open. But your body won't move. You're awake, your mind sharp with fear, but your arms are frozen. Your chest is heavy, too heavy, and in the shadows above you, something flickers. You feel it, a pressure on your ribs, a presence in the room. You want to scream, to pray, to run, but all you can do is stare, eyes wide and terrified, as something you cannot see breathes with you. This is no nightmare. This is sleep paralysis, a very real neurological phenomenon. But in the medieval mind, it's not the result of science or sleep cycles. It's a demonic visitation. In England, they call it the mare, an Old Norse word, not for a horse, but for an evil spirit that rides sleeping bodies like beasts. In Germany, it's the Alp, a goblin-like creature that sits on your chest, tangling your dreams into dread. In Italy, it's the Pandafice, a dark witch who steals breath and life. In France, it's the cauchemar, a compound of coucher, to lie down, and mar, demon. That word survives today as nightmare, though we've long forgotten the fear that birthed it. You talk to a village healer the next morning, an old woman with herbs in her sleeves and ancient knowledge in her eyes. She nods solemnly when you describe your sleep. You were sat upon, she says,
a hag, or maybe the devil himself. It comes when the soul is troubled or the body unclean. She gives you a pouch of herbs, valerian, mugwort, poppy seed, and instructs you to place it beneath your pillow. You must also sleep with iron under your bed, she warns, and never go to bed angry or impure. If the demon finds a crack in your spirit, it will return. And it often does. You travel to another town and hear similar tales. A blacksmith's wife claims her husband died of it, his mouth frozen mid-scream, his eyes locked open. A monk says it's a punishment for impure thoughts. A midwife tells you of a girl who woke up clawing at her own throat, convinced a dead uncle was choking her. The church has its own explanation. It isn't folklore, it's sin. You're told that lustful thoughts, unspoken lies, or broken vows can open the soul to these nocturnal invaders. Some priests conduct nighttime exorcisms. Others recommend fasting, confession, or holy water sprinkled on the bed. One friar even recommends sleeping in a cross-shaped position to drive the demons away. But sometimes fear takes hold of entire communities. You hear of a village where, for 3 nights in a row, multiple people died in their sleep, each claiming the same dark figure appeared before them the night prior. The village priest ordered a mass burial and burned the bedding. The locals whispered of soul thieves, spirits that fed on fear. No one slept soundly there for years. And then there are the succubi and incubi, seductive demons who visit under the veil of dreams. The succubus, female, drains men of their essence through passion. The incubus, male, lies with women and leaves them pregnant with cursed offspring. These beliefs are so widespread that they end up in church doctrine. Even St. Augustine speculated about such spirits. You stay one night in a convent where the nuns fear such visitations so deeply that they sleep with their hands bound in cloth and their rosaries wound around their wrists. One nun, young, devout, woke screaming and blind for 3 days, convinced the devil kissed her in her sleep. The abbess blames fasting. The others suspect sin. But not all sleep demons are feared. In distant parts of Ireland and Wales, some believe the night visitor is not a devil, but a messenger. One who brings dreams of ancestors, omens of death, or warnings from the spirit world. Some sleep with doors unlatched, hoping for visions. It's a different kind of terror, welcomed, not shunned. And yet, even you begin to change your sleep rituals. You find yourself muttering a short prayer before you close your eyes. You place rosemary under your blanket and avoid sleeping on your back. You remember the old crone's words, "It's always the chest they sit on, never the feet." You start to turn sideways, clutching a charm carved from rowan wood. You wake in the night once more, eyes open, body frozen. You feel the weight again, but this time it passes quickly. Maybe your amulet worked, or maybe it just wasn't your turn. But what if it is tomorrow? Sleep, once a refuge, now feels like a threshold, one you must cross carefully, ritual by ritual, night
after night. And still the world sleeps. Still it dreams. In the next leg of your journey, you'll leave behind the peasant cottages and monasteries and climb into the grand feather beds of royalty. You're about to learn how kings and queens engineered their sleep like a performance, and how insomnia became both a curse and a weapon.
The castle rises like a stone dream above the village, gray towers silhouetted against a velvet sky. You're led through its echoing halls, past flickering torches and woven tapestries, until you reach the royal bedchamber. Here, everything changes. You've entered a world where sleep is a ceremony, not a need, where pillows are politics, and the bed itself is a stage. The royal bed is immense, high, curtained, and carved with gilded lions. The mattress is stuffed not with straw, but with goose feathers, sometimes even swan down, and layered with fine linens imported from the East. A fur coverlet rests atop, even in summer, because luxury must look warm even if it sweats. But the strangest thing? The king rarely sleeps alone, and rarely sleeps well. You arrive just in time for the ritual of putting the king to bed. It's not a private affair. Attendants bustle around with perfumed water, silk nightclothes, and prayers. A bishop may even be present, blessing the king's rest, while courtiers hover discreetly in the shadows. The king's sleep must be witnessed like the setting of the sun, proof that the realm itself can close its eyes. After all, if the king doesn't sleep, the kingdom might not either. But once the curtains are drawn and the room darkens, you see the truth. The king tosses, often plagued by worry, insomnia, or gout. His mind whirs with political intrigue, border conflicts, and the fear of assassination. Sleep to him is dangerous. It's the moment his sword is farthest from his hand. You learn that royal insomnia is both a curse and a weapon. A sleepless monarch might summon advisors at midnight to make decisions others would wait days for. Sleep becomes an instrument of dominance. If I cannot rest, neither shall you. The French king Charles VI once called his council into his chamber while he lay half naked on his bed, his eyes wild and unblinking after 3 nights awake. They obeyed him anyway. Fear has its own etiquette. And queens? Their sleep is scrutinized. You're told about Queen Isabella of Castile, so devout that she claimed never to sleep on a feather bed for fear of comfort drawing her from prayer. Yet her servants confess she often dozed during vespers, her head bobbing gently beneath her veil. Other queens like Elizabeth of Hungary were said to dream of saints and wake with visions that shaped policy. A royal woman's dreams could become prophecy. A royal man's nightmares could become war. You meet a court physician who specializes in sleep elixirs. He's no apothecary, he's a strategist. He mixes poppy syrup, wine steeped with lavender, or milk warmed with crushed coral. But he must dose carefully. Too much, and the king sleeps through important alarms. Too little, and the night becomes a pacing hell. The queen, too, has her own recipes. Rosewater with honey, a prayer stitched into the hem of her sleeping gown, a polished stone beneath her pillow to ward off false dreams. Royal children are another matter. You're told that infant heirs must be trained not just to sleep, but to sleep nobly. No fussing, no bedwetting. Wet nurses take shifts rocking cradles near the royal bed, while maids whisper lullabies in Latin. One princess is said to have been trained to wake precisely at matins for early grooming, aged 4. But even with all this theater, royals were still human, and no stranger to terror in the dark. King Henry IV of France was haunted by dreams of betrayal and murder. He had guards stationed inside his chamber, blades drawn. Catherine de' Medici reportedly burned black candles and had horoscopes read nightly before bed to ensure no demonic influences would infiltrate her dreams. Even the mighty Charlemagne was said to sleep lightly, always in armor when on campaign, with a sword beneath his pillow and one eye open. And of course, there were decoys. You're surprised to learn that many kings used bed doubles, servants who slept in their place to deter assassins or confuse spies. These poor souls laid rigid in royal beds while the real monarch slept in another room, or didn't sleep at all. It was a job both dangerous and honored. One such double was stabbed in his sleep in place of a Hungarian prince and was later sainted as a martyr. In one French court, the king had a decoy bedchamber entirely separate from his real one, with false courtiers who acted out the entire bedtime ritual each night, down to extinguishing the candles in front of invited guests. And sometimes, sleep itself became a scandal. You hear whispers of a nobleman caught sharing the queen's bed, not in intimacy, but to listen to her dreams. He claimed she spoke state secrets aloud while sleeping. He was executed anyway. In another court, a servant is punished for making too much noise and disturbing the king's healing slumber. He is publicly whipped at dawn. Sleep among royalty isn't peace. It's performance, strategy, vulnerability, and spectacle. And then there are the bedchambers themselves, built like fortresses, multiple locks, trap doors, some with adjoining chapels, others with escape tunnels. Beds are often raised several feet off the ground, not for elegance, but for control. Anyone approaching would have to climb. The monarch always has the high ground, even in dreams. You spend a night in one such bed, velvet curtains drawn, the ceiling painted with stars. You try to rest, but every creak make your heart race. Every flutter of fabric could be a knife. You long for the hay bed in the village cottage. But next your journey turns not to comfort, but to science, or what passed for it. You'll discover the bizarre medieval theories about why we sleep, what dreams mean, and how doctors tried to control the unconscious with potions, leeches, and fire. The medicine of sleep is about to unfold. You descend from the velvet-hung royal bedchambers and into the dim, smoky quarters of a medieval physician, the kind who treats sleep not as rest, but as a battlefield between bodily fluids and spiritual influences. Here, sleep is not merely something the body does, it's something the body suffers, a delicate, dangerous state governed by ancient theories and wild remedies. The room smells of vinegar and dried herbs. Charts of the moon hang next to sketches of the four humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. The physician, robed in dark wool and ink-stained fingers, explains to you the humoral theory of sleep. It's simple, he says with confidence. Sleep is caused by the cooling of the body and the inward flow of digestion. Too much food, you'll sleep too deeply. Not enough, you won't sleep at all. Spicy food will stir the blood. Fatty meat thickens the phlegm. Wine, only if it's warm and red. You nod, half lost already. This is the science of the medieval world. The physician believes that sleep is a matter of balance. If you suffer nightmares, it's not demons, but an excess of black bile. If you toss and turn at night, it's a heating of the blood. If you dream of water, your phlegm is too strong. To fix this, he prescribes a variety of treatments: cold compresses to the head, warm mustard plasters to the feet, enemas made from boiled herbs, or, most common, bloodletting. You witness one such treatment. A man, sleepless for days, lies on a table as a vein in his forearm is opened. Blood pools into a shallow bowl. The physician watches the color carefully. "Too red," he mutters. "He dreams of fire and fights. We must drain more." Next comes fumigation. You are ushered into a chamber filled with thick herbal smoke. Sage, chamomile, poppy. The patient breathes deeply, coughing at first, then drifting into sleep. It's an early attempt at sedation, and in rare moments it works. Other methods are stranger still. You read from a medical book that recommends placing the testicles of a rooster beneath a pillow to induce sleep. Another suggests wearing the skin of a dormouse. One manuscript recommends boiling lettuce with vinegar and lamb's brain, then drinking it before bed. Does it work? Probably not. But the placebo effect is strong, and belief can cradle the mind just as tightly as any mattress. Dream interpretation, however, is where the physician's true pride lies. He shows you a dream manual, a thick tome copied under candlelight over generations. In it, each dream has a meaning. Dream of flying? You desire freedom, or may soon fall from grace. Dream of snakes? Deceit is near. Dream of fish? Pregnancy or possibly death by drowning, depending on the fish. The Artemidoros, a Greek text, is his Bible. Dreams, he tells you, are the soul's language unfiltered by the body, but they must be translated. You ask about nightmares? He leans in closer. Nightmares are caused by wind or ghosts, possibly too much cheese. You aren't sure if he's joking. You then meet a folk healer, a woman with no books and no Latin, who scoffs at the physician's leeches. She works with roots, stones, moonlight, and intuition. For nightmares, she mixes crushed lavender with goat's milk. For sleepwalking, she ties poppy stems into a wreath and places it under the pillow. If someone screams in sleep, she whispers a spell and sprinkles salt around the bed. They've let something in, she explains. The soul leaves during dreams. Sometimes something else tries to follow it back in. Her patients often do sleep more soundly after her visits. Whether from the herbs or from belief, you can't say. Not everyone seeks cures. Some seek control. You hear of a court alchemist who tries to manipulate dreams with stones soaked in mercury. Another claims he can dream of specific people by sleeping with their names written on his chest in ink. A recluse in the mountains insists he can enter other people's dreams, though he's later arrested for heresy. In some monasteries, monks attempt lucid prayer, a kind of meditative dreaming where visions of saints or angels might appear. They believe sleep is a sacred doorway and that the unconscious is not wild, but holy. But there's danger here too. One monk, too ambitious, spends days without real sleep and ends up raving in the cloister, convinced he has spoken to the devil himself. Sleep becomes a thing to fear and to master. By now, you see the theme. The medieval mind does not separate body from spirit, medicine from magic. A dream can be a prophecy. An herb can be a prayer. A nightmare might be bad digestion or a demon's whisper. You fall asleep one night with mugwort under your pillow and a prayer scribbled on your wrist. Your dreams are vivid. You see a castle of glass, a procession of owls, a man with no face whispering in a forgotten tongue. You awake, covered in sweat. The physician says it means nothing. The folk healer says it's a warning. The monk says it's a vision. You say nothing and pack your things. Because next, you journey into the future of sleep, where candles become clocks, fires become gaslight, and the industrial age shatters the medieval night forever. You're about to watch modern time invade ancient rest.
You hear of one nobleman in particular, a high-ranking baron, whose snoring was so thunderous it was said to wake the dogs in the courtyard. Rather than share a bed with him, his wife opted for a separate chamber in the eastern wing of their manor, and the steward ordered thick rush mats and straw-stuffed curtains hung between their quarters in an effort to muffle the nighttime racket. Among the peasants, less luxurious solutions existed. Bundles of herbs stuffed near the nose, heads wrapped in woolen scarves, or a sharp elbow jabbed mid-snore by a bed partner. And what of dreams? You soon learn that people of the Middle Ages did not consider dreams random or meaningless. Quite the opposite. They believed dreams were messages, sometimes divine, sometimes demonic. A dream about falling might be a warning from God. A dream about wolves might mean betrayal. Whole books were dedicated to the interpretation of dreams, especially among the educated clergy and nobility. You spot one such manuscript in the library of a local abbey, its margins crowded with scribbles and notes, its pages filled with diagrams linking planetary movements to visions of sleep. In the peasant huts, dreams hold simpler, though no less potent meaning. A man dreams of a bountiful harvest and wakes early to tend the soil, believing fate is in his favor. A woman dreams of her dead grandmother standing at the foot of her bed. She leaves an offering of bread at the crossroads, just in case the spirit had come with a warning. Your presence in this world, invisible though it may be, makes you feel oddly connected to them, these sleepers of the past. Their fears are familiar. Their wishes echo into your own time. Though centuries apart, you recognize the quiet vulnerability in their nightly retreat from the world. You wander into the room of a young scribe, recently apprenticed to the cathedral's archivist. His candles are still burning, though his quill has fallen from his fingers and left a long, accidental stroke across the parchment. He has dozed off at his writing desk, his head tilted to one side. You glance at his scribblings, on the humors of man and the quality of rest. The ink is still wet. Beside him is a small pouch of lavender and a folded scrap of paper with a prayer for restful sleep. Above him, hanging from the beam of the ceiling, is a charm made from bones and feathers, a curious mix of Christian and folk traditions. An angel carved from driftwood strung with the tail feather of a raven, a piece of St. Cuthbert's relic wrapped in linen. You sense the anxiety of a young man trying to balance faith, tradition, and fear in the quiet hours of the night. Elsewhere, a group of traveling players huddled together under the stars, camped near the edge of a sleepy village. The fire has burned low. One sings softly to herself, her voice trembling through the cold air. She pulls her cloak tighter and draws a circle in the dirt around her bedroll, muttering a charm meant to keep bad spirits at bay. Her companions snore and shift, oblivious. A short distance away, a pair of lovers whisper beneath a shared cloak, their faces glowing faintly with moonlight and secrecy. Sleep will come late to them. The longer you linger, the more you notice the gentle rituals, the deeply personal ways people court slumber in this age of candlelight and shadows. Some pray, some chant, some rub oil on their temples or slip a sacred stone beneath their pillow. Others fear the dark too deeply to sleep at all. In one village you find a mother singing to her child, a lullaby that has likely been sung for generations. The melody is haunting and beautiful. You don't know the language, but you understand its meaning: protection, comfort, love. The child's eyes close slowly, lashes fluttering, until he finally drifts into a dreamless, safe sleep. You return again to the monasteries, where monks wake at odd hours for prayers, matins and lauds, and then sleep again in short segmented bursts. Their sleep is fractured by devotion, divided by bell and candle. You marvel at their discipline. The world outside may change, but inside these stone walls, the rhythm of sleep remains dictated by sacred duty.
But even within those hallowed halls, human instincts prevail. A young monk, barely more than a boy, struggles to stay awake during vigils. His head bobs, he jerks awake, then drifts again. The older brother beside him gives him a sharp tap with his walking stick. The boy startles, but doesn't speak. You see his shame, but also understand. Sleep always wins in the end. From the city towers to the peasant's hearth, sleep is a universal surrender. And as you move unseen through this medieval world of night, you realize it is in these hours of vulnerability and quiet that people show their truest selves, unarmored, unguarded, deeply human.
As the medieval world sleeps on, you drift farther from the noise of the village and into the highland pastures where shepherds rest beneath open skies. There are no walls here, no candles or crucifixes hanging over beds, just stars scattered like ancient runes across the heavens. The shepherd's sleep is light, broken by the occasional bleat of a lamb or the distant howl of a wolf. He wraps himself in wool, his staff within arm's reach, and one eye always half open. Sleep for him is not a luxury. It is a negotiation with nature. And yet he dreams. His head nods. His thoughts slip away. Perhaps in that moment he is no longer a lonely figure on a cold hillside, but a knight with a banner, or a husband returned to a warm hearth. For all the hardship and rawness of his world, the shepherd, like every other soul, finds refuge in sleep. You come to understand that in this time, this rugged, candlelit century, sleep is not merely a biological function. It is woven into faith, custom, survival. It is shaped by class and creed, by moon and market, by plague and prayer. Sleep is rarely uninterrupted, never guaranteed, often improvised. There is no ideal 8-hour stretch. There is no memory foam mattress or blackout curtain. There is simply the body, the night, and whatever protections the mind can muster. And so you retrace your steps through cottages where children dream of saints and devils, through keeps where nobles sigh into feather pillows, through monasteries pulsing with the rhythm of bells. You remember the herb bundles hung from rafters, the sacred texts folded under pillows, the whispered charms, the muttered psalms. You recall the laughter and fear, the tenderness and fatigue. You pause at the bed of a midwife who sleeps only in moments, always prepared for the frantic knock of someone in labor. She lies on her side, boots still on, candle stub still flickering beside her. Beneath her bed are the tools of her trade: thread, herbs, knives, swaddling cloths. Her dreams, when they come, are short and jumbled, fragmented memories of births and cries and whispered prayers. She does not seek comfort in sleep. She only hopes it is enough to carry her through another dawn. Further along you find a pilgrim asleep on the church steps. He has walked for weeks to reach this holy site, and now he lies curled in his own cloak, hand resting on a carved scallop shell. His shoes are falling apart, his feet are bandaged, yet he sleeps as if he has finally arrived. Perhaps he has. The journey may end here, or it may only just begin. But for tonight he is still. Eventually, your journey leads you to one final place, a graveyard. Strange perhaps to end here, but something pulls you in. The ground is uneven. Stones lean at odd angles. moss and time erasing the names of those who lie beneath. You realize how sleep and death were often intertwined in medieval thought. To sleep was a rehearsal for death. To die was to rest in peace. And perhaps, for many, the only true, unbroken sleep came at life's end. You look up at the moon one last time, silver and whole, casting long shadows over the ancient earth. You feel a deep, aching admiration for these people who faced night after night without the comforts you know. They feared things you do not, but they also found beauty in places you might miss. They taught their children to sleep with one ear open, to guard their dreams, to believe in spirits and stars. You've witnessed 1,000 slumbers, each different, each intimate, and in that you've come to a quiet understanding. Sleep is not just a universal need, it is a mirror, a reflection of culture, fear, longing, love. In the stillness of the night, you've seen who they truly were. And as the cock crows far off in the distance, the spell of night begins to lift. Fires are stoked, curtains drawn, children shaken gently awake. The medieval world stirs, stretching stiff limbs and blinking into the dawn. The time of sleep has passed. For now. You too return to your time, your world, but you carry something with you, a memory of moonlit straw beds and holy whispers, of dreamers and watchmen, lovers and monks, all linked by the fragile thread of sleep. And next time you lie in your own bed, whether on silk or spring, foam or feather, you'll close your eyes and wonder, who else is dreaming with you across time?